Good afternoon, everyone. This is very exciting. This is our first in-person meeting. This is our first in-person meeting in many months for the Transportation and Circulation Committee. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. And I think we'll start with the roll call.
Committee Member Bakke, Ian Bakke. Committee Member Hillary Blackerby.
Here.
Chair Kathleen Rodriguez.
Present.
Vice Chair Andres Malavos.
Present.
Committee Member Susan Horn.
Here.
Committee Member Eve Sanford. Absent. Thank you.
We have the agenda as written. Are there any changes that need to be noted?
Chair Rodriguez, there's no changes to tonight's agenda.
Good. So our next topic is public comment. If there are any individuals wanting public comment on any subject in our jurisdiction, now is the time.
We have no Zoom public comment.
Thank you. And seeing none in the room, we move to announcements. Would you like to?
Thank you,
Do
Chair Rodriguez. It is so nice to see everyone in person. So just as we fumbled now on our Zoom meetings, now we can fumble again for the in-person meetings. So we'll try to make it flawless. But and it's still a hybrid for public comment, can be either in person or via Zoom. So we will be monitoring that. But it is new for us in this dynamic. So thank you for your patience. So as far as for the announcements, we did have a committee member, Ian Bakke, is stepping down from the Transportation Circulation Commission. Really appreciated his service and left us a little bit too early, but understand he did take a job outside the state, and that is the reasoning for stepping down. So the next item on our announcements is just the City Council Advisory Group's applications to fill our vacancies is May 9th. And so anybody tuning into the meeting or anybody that you might know that might be interested in joining this committee, that is the link to go get an application. And that is all for the announcements.
And how many committee members are we allowed?
It's a 7-member committee, and we have 2 vacancies.
So I want to emphasize, we have 2 vacancies. Anybody who's watching or listening, it would be greatly appreciated to have people who are motivated and interested in talking about our transportation plans in Santa Barbara.
Great.
So we go on to the approval of the minutes from February 24th.
Madam Chair, I'd move to adopt or to approve the minutes from the February meeting.
Any second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. I'm like, we don't have to do a roll call for this anymore. Great, thanks.
We're all sitting here. Okay. Now the drum roll. We have the big election for a new chair and vice chair for this year, which will be 2, maybe 3 more meetings, depending if we have an emergency meeting, right? I would like to entertain nominations at this time.
I would like to nominate Andres Malavos for chair.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Do you vote for yourself?
There you go. And a little bird told me that Hillary Blackerby might be willing to be vice chair. Just saying. Oh, Susan's going to nominate Hillary. Yay.
I nominate Hillary Blackerby for vice chair for this coming year.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you both very much.
Great. And Chair Rodriguez, just as a follow-up, I'll be reaching out to the newly elected chair and vice chair to set up a meeting and review all of the protocols before we have our next TCC meeting, which would be in June.
Okay, very good. Okay, moving right along. We have a wonderful update tonight, actually. I think the three of us, the three ladies on the board, women, whatever we're supposed to be called, have been on this committee for a long time. And Andres may not have seen this initially, but it's pretty darn exciting. We've been watching the Bicycle Master Plan for a number of years now, since its pre-planning and inception, and Sam's going to give us a little partial update. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Chair Rodriguez and committee members. This will indeed be a partial update. Back in October of last year, Jessica Grant gave a really detailed update and report out on where we stand on phase 1 and phase 2 projects. Tonight, we're going to look a little more granular at some of the spatial data and see kind of how mapping can help us understand progress and limitations of our 2016 Bicycle Master Plan implementation. So the intent this evening is to share what we've done since the 2016 Bicycle Master Plan was adopted. And with that information, to use updated maps to understand where we have local and regional gaps in our bike infrastructure. And then with that information to plan projects and acquire funding to close those gaps. A lot of the desire to update our data and our spatial data specifically came from the need to coordinate with partners and public. This is obviously a very public-facing plan, and we use it internally on a regular basis, but we've also found that in certain applications, we've been better at getting grant funding and being successful building projects than we have recording what we've built successfully. So it was time to pause for a moment and see if we can make that a little bit more robust and a point in time that we can use as a reference moving forward. A lot of this came out of actually a recent application to recertify the city of Santa Barbara as a bicycle-friendly community. And in that process, we learned that the League of American Cyclists has a very robust data platform that they utilize to assess award status. And we found that many of our Bicycle Master Plan projects we had implemented were not captured in our current infrastructure record. So that's kind of the impetus behind where we are today and why I'm here this evening. With that, we would like TCC to recommend to City Council an addendum to the 2016 Bicycle Master Plan. Again, providing an updated map showing existing, funded, and proposed facilities since the BMP adoption, and to find those map updates consistent with the city circulation element, Bicycle Master Plan, and Vision Zero strategy. In Santa Barbara, we're lucky that we've had a Bicycle Master Plan on the records for a long time, and that BMP has gone through a number of iterations and updates over the years. So this evening, what we're sharing with you is just a further progress towards the goal of, complete streets and better connected bike infrastructure throughout our city. The 2016 BMP was mainly focused, again, on offering complete streets, offering safe connections and safety for all road users, closing gaps in our bicycle network, and doing all that in a way that fits with the character of our city. With that intent, the 2016 BMP identified 35 new or enhanced capital bike projects that would be implemented in 3 phases. Phase 1 would begin no later than 2020, phase 2, 2025, and phase 3 for implementation starting in 2030. Of the phase 1 and phase 2 projects, there are around 22 capital projects, and there's a detailed summary on those in your staff report. I believe it's attachment 1. So through implementation of our BMP and making progress through phase 1 and phase 2 projects, there's really 3 main approaches. For lower cost projects, to see if we can incorporate restriping, potential Vision Zero changes into our existing and regular pavement maintenance program. For those higher cost projects and those more expensive facilities, we have to turn to grant funding. And the city's been very successful in acquiring grant funding for active transportation program monies, local Measure A monies, as well as highway safety improvement program. On the right-hand side, you can see an image of the rendering of the future State Street Undercrossing project, which is an ATP-funded program that will help transform the downtown corridor of State Street. And then lastly, we found too that in implementing BMP projects, programming is also a key component. So looking at continued support for our regional Safe Routes to Schools programming, as well as our Vision Zero strategy here in the city. So as I mentioned again today, the intent is to kind of set a new baseline and to make sure that our inventory of existing infrastructure is up to date. It's capturing project details, any scope changes that might have changed since the original project was developed. Additionally, as bike infrastructure changes, we've seen the need to document different types of treatments. Is this a class 3 bike boulevard? Does this project have sharrows or green lane markings? And then additionally, is this project part of a larger project? Does it have a Vision Zero component? Is it part of pavement maintenance? Even things as simple as the year it was installed help us establish a baseline of when a project was constructed and completed and what kind of facility it offers. And then additionally, we wanted to look at planned infrastructure because what's been built is only part of the picture. And we're fortunate here that we have a lot of funded projects that will be nearing construction deadlines pretty soon. So we're going to start to see some real changes in our bike network imminently. So again, looking at funded and proposed projects as well. Excuse me. One more. So this is our existing 2022 bicycle network in the city of Santa Barbara. This map has already been updated since the attachments went out last week, and this map will continue to be updated as we move forward. Again, it's a work in progress. This is a point in time, if you will, but we've got a lot of restriping that's going to be happening in the city soon, and we have a number of big projects that will be entering the construction phase soon. So again, this is meant to be a guiding document for us internally to know the total length of bikeways that we have in the city, the different classes where they might be, and then also as we move forward into later maps to look at potential gaps in the bike network. I would just like to point out that in red, you can see the new Las Positas Modoc multi-use path here, and down along Cabrillo Boulevard, you can see a recent pavement maintenance project back from, I think, 2019. So a little bit of new infrastructure, but again, this is a snapshot in time of where we are right now, bike infrastructure in the city. This is looking since 2016, so since the adoption of the 2016 Bike Master Plan, what have we done? In red, again, you can see Las Positas Modoc multi-use path, Cabrillo Boulevard, a little restriping along Yananali. Additionally, in blue, you can see bikeways that have been funded. Many of these are close to design completion. One of them, I believe, is out to bid at this point. These are imminent projects that we're going to see on the ground in Santa Barbara in the next year. So you can really see the bike network starting to take shape here, even just in the last 6 years. And there's a lot going on in this map, but this map shows all of our existing funded and originally proposed facilities. Again, in red, these are bikeways that have been built since 2016. What you see in blue are bikeways that are funded. And then kind of in background in gray, you can see the proposed bikeways that were mentioned in the 2016 Bicycle Master Plan. Additionally, you can see existing bikeways that were on the ground before 2016. And what this map really shows is gaps in the system. The first thing that comes to my mind is Cliff Drive. Looking, there's some pre-existing bikeways between 2016. There's a big gap just west of Meigs, especially with the new Las Positas and Modoc multi-use path coming to completion, which we're all so excited about. That gap will stand out even more. So again, looking at the holistic picture here as new infrastructure is completed. So moving forward, staff will be returning to council on May 24th to provide a similar update and with the intent of providing an addendum to the 2016 Bicycle Master Plan, which is the existing funded and proposed facilities maps. As we move forward, we hope that these maps will be updated on a regular basis as new projects are constructed and completed. Again, we should have some pretty significant changes in the next year, so we're excited about updating that. And then looking further into the future, we do hope to provide some kind of a more interactive or dynamic map that could be public-facing. We could use it internally for our own planning purposes, but something that's a little bit easier to understand and use as a bike rider in the city of Santa Barbara, both looking at built projects and also projects that will be constructed. With that, I'll leave you with our recommendation to TCC, and we are here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Well, let's see. Thank you. Do the committee members have any clarifying questions before we move to public comment?
I have just a quick question is, where it says, the one right before that says an interactive map, you said you want a map that's more usable for the public, right? And were you talking about online or paper? I mean, what is, if you make a paper map, of course, it's going to be outdated pretty fast, but it also is something easy to carry on a bike and to look at easier than going online. Just wondering what you had in mind for interactive maps.
Chair Rodriguez, Committee Member Horn, excellent question. We envision both ultimately. So the first step has been updating our internal GIS mapping data. With that, once we finalize and go to council, I envision some kind of a public-facing online map that could involve interaction from a person. So I want to see how many Class 1 facilities there are in Santa Barbara, highlighting different things on the map. However, the Traffic Solutions Regional South Coast Bike Map dates back to 2013 and is very overdue for an update. So again, I envision with a lot of the new infrastructure coming online that these data will help inform a new printing of that map as well.
Could I just add to that? Who is going to be doing this updating?
As far as
There's so much to do.
Yeah, and as far as the online component and our internal guidance, we are working to have a better system to document end of project, recording of what we've done. And the first step in that was, again, getting our baseline established. So internally, we will be working to improve the way that we document our projects. And I would just say that that's actually a really good problem to have when you can't keep up with the projects that you're building. So I hope that we continue to have that problem because it means that we're being successful in our grant funding and in our projects that we're getting on the ground.
Good point.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question. It's going to maybe expand on maybe not necessarily exclusively the map, but incorporation of underlying data points that feed a lot of baseline research, then the recommendations, and ultimately the project. I've heard like inclusion into that, not necessarily into a live interactive map, but also tables or some of the underlying data for kind of what's fueling the hot spots or the troublesome intersections, things like that, is being incorporated. Maybe just to expand on that, I know some of that's like third party or licensed. I've always been kind of curious, but I was curious if you could speak to that.
Committee Member Malavos, I'll try. I know that, again, the intent now is to get a baseline understanding of where we're at with our bike projects, but in our experience applying for league certification, I did realize that our data has a lot to be desired. For instance, some of our bikeways were based strictly on centerline points, and so we actually worked to split the centerline data to reflect both sides of the street, which could have different types of bike infrastructure. So I think the first step is having robust data that we can trust, and then looking at other potential partnerships, either through Vision Zero and public health, or looking at better ways to visualize collision data, components like that. Staff has been working with a professor out at UCSB whose whole field is combining both collision data and bike ridership data, and using those data to inform maps that speak to where people go and why they go there by bike, and where are safer places to go or safer routes to use. So we hope to continue to explore that partnership with her team.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Of course.
Hello.
I know, I'm not,
Are you calling on people?
sure.
Have we passed the baton already?
No, well, go ahead. Yeah,
I just am curious as a follow-up question to the data and the collision, the maps that show, the bigger ones and the different color ones where there's more collisions, bigger dot and stuff. And just wondering, is that envisioned to go online? Like if people wanted to see where a collision map, or I don't know what you'd call it, but are you envisioning that to go online too, or no?
Chair Rodriguez, Committee Member Horn, we do have the Vision Zero mapping. It was last done. It's a snapshot in time of 10 years of data from 2008 to 2017. So anytime we do, I forget the frequency, is it 1 to 2 years that we're doing our collision reports? Annually collision reports. So eventually we'll have like another, 10-year snapshot, and you almost have to wait till the next 10 years after you put infrastructure in place to see what the overall trends are. We could see preliminary trends in the yearly data. But long story short is that, we want to see synergies from not only from the collision data, but then to see where, again, what are the existing facilities now, what are they coming online, because after we do all of the phases for the bike master plan, it will be time for another bicycle master plan update, and so the data that we do now will help set up the future for review of a future master plan effort.
I think so.
I do have a question. Does anyone else have a question first? Okay. I hesitated right as you finished because I realized I'm finding this recommendation, the way it's written, unwieldy. So maybe it needs to be in 2 sentences or something, because I'm not understanding. I understand overall what you would appreciate from us, but okay, I got the Transportation Committee. TCC recommend to City Council an addendum to the bicycle master plan that provides an updated map showing existing, funded, and proposed bike facilities since BMP adoption. Period. I'm feeling like there's a period there because I'm not sure what is being asked next. And find the map updates consistent with the city circulation element. Is that what you're trying to say? So there's a with missing. So, and then I would just suggest maybe there should be a second sentence that says, In addition, that the committee find the map updates are consistent with the city's circulation element, bicycle master plan, and Vision Zero strategy. Is that what you want? I mean, is that what you're interested in us being aware of because we know those documents and we know the new stuff and it all looks good? Okay.
Precisely what we're
Yes.
looking for.
So again, it's our latest snapshot in time. So we had a snapshot in time of existing facilities back in 2016.
Right.
So this is, the 2022 is the new snapshot in time. And then since also what's been funded during that time. So that's another snapshot, an important layer to showcase. And then the proposed bike facilities, those are still the same. We haven't done anything at this point in time to change any of that data because we haven't been out in the community. We're still trying to implement the 2016 report.
Yeah, my only concern is that the recommendation we make is clear,
Yes.
so that the city
Yes.
council understands what we're saying, so maybe we can
Perfect.
just clean that up a little bit.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And could I just say, is this the map you're talking about?
So it's a series of 3 maps. So there's the first map that we showed in the presentation is the 2022 existing network as of April 2022. And then the other one is what has been funded, and that's basically through the construction process that we have. So those are the ones that are listed, I believe, in red. And then the proposed bike facility is still the same as it was in the 2016 plan, and that's the third map that has everything reflected on there from the existing, funded, and proposed.
So this is the map that will go,
Yes,
all 3.
yes.
If I could clarify the reason for
They
all
overlap a
three,
lot.
it's that the 2016 bicycle master plan had just one map, which was existing funded and proposed facilities, existing bike facilities map, and they were all an ask. It was like, these are all of our dream projects. This is what it looks like. Now we need to reflect that we've constructed a lot of those projects and we funded a lot of those projects too. So combining all that information on one map, as you saw, is a little bit of a headache, and we felt that it was better to communicate some different maps that tell different stories about what we've done and maybe what we still need to do moving forward.
Okay.
So the third map is a summary, basically, which is,
Looks like
but
it
it's
is.
much easier to understand stepwise. Okay. Whew. Do we have any more questions before we move on? Public comment? No? Okay. Okay. Do we have any requests for public comment?
We do. We have Barry Remis.
Good evening, and it brings back memories to see everybody in person.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez, former Chair Rodriguez, still.
Sort of former.
My name is Barry Revis, and I am representing Dusty Bike Cluster, advocates for safe walking, biking, and education as well. And this is wonderful. I'll keep this public comment. I just want to keep it brief. You know, we support and encourage your support of staff's recommendation, and it's great to see, not just for the reason only of qualifying for the league's bicycle-friendly communities, but also really, you know, to see these maps being trued up to reflect the current status and what's still to come. We want to also commend this transportation department for taking the opportunities that they've done, and of course that we continue to feel that they will seize any opportunities to be able to, along with pavement maintenance, et cetera, to realize bike and pedestrian safety and access improvements so that all streets are safe for all users. All right. And one really great example of that is that we currently have repavement work being done on Lower Castillo Street, which Mr. Bailey has confirmed that will, once that pavement is done, get restriped with a buffered bike lane to continue the buffered bike lane that we also find on Bath Street and Upper Castillo as well. So thank you And so we do recommend, and it's a good observation to maybe perhaps split the recommendation into a little more digestible chunks for the city council. So we hope that you'll agree that this should be moved forward for their approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Remus? Well? Yes, it's time for committee comments.
Great, thank you. This is very exciting. I totally understand, you know, you just, like, you get it done, you get the funding, you build the thing, you move on to the next thing, because there's always something more, but it is nice to look back and go, wow, okay, good job. 2016 sounds like a long time ago, but it really wasn't in the grand scheme of public works projects, you know, being built, so a lot to be proud of. I did actually just hear at Earth Day this past weekend that the county bike map, they're attempting to get rid of all of the 2013 ones so that they can print a new one. So it'll be nice to have all of those reflected in there. And then I had a question for Mr. Fertner about I understand the city could, you know, build some type of interactive map, but I wonder, you know, I know how it works for transit and bus stops, but obviously, like in something like Google Maps, they have, you can do biking directions and all of that, but I'm curious how is that just based on, you know, a Google car driving around and capturing it, or is that something that cities can provide so they know what types of facilities there are?
Committee Member Blackerby, it's an excellent question, and it's something we need to explore. One of the challenges that we face that is really the reason that we're just now getting to a robust update of our bike infrastructure is staff time and bandwidth. And I envision, at least initially, that we would try to have something online that can at least show what the different classes of infrastructure are and where they are, that's updated on a quarterly basis or so. I don't know that we would have the capability to actually recommend routes based on that infrastructure.
Yeah.
So
But I meant, how does our data, the actual data, get out to Google Maps, if that's something that, you know, just because, you know, if there's a way to have that, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
question, but I'll look into it.
And then the only other thing was that Las Positas is LAS instead of LOS on this map, so just so we don't, you know, set this in stone for another 5 years or something. That's the only thing, but no, it's very exciting, and congratulations on getting to this point.
Thank you for that feedback. And again, just to reiterate, this map will be changing.
Yeah.
It's a point in time. There will be further edits to it as we move forward. There's a lot of little pieces of bike infrastructure that have been put in even in the last 6 years. And going through the backlog of all those little 1 or 2 block street segments has taken a lot of time. So I'm assuming that we'll continue to find areas and continue to update the map as, you know, Lower Castillo is restriped. So more to come.
Great, thank you.
Actually, one other question on the map, and sorry to call you right back up. With the locations of, I know there's adding of the electric bike infrastructure and the locations of that, is that something that's going to be planned or mapped out for this supplement to the master plan?
Speaking specifically about bike share,
Yes.
at this time, we don't expect that to be the case, mainly because B-Cycle does host bike locations in mapping form on their website in real time. So we could potentially host like a mirror of that, but I think most people would want to be referencing that site for real-time availability.
Thank you.
Anyone else with comments?
No, but I'd be happy to make a motion.
Would you?
Yeah, I'll try. Maybe if I get some help here on the screen, I can, sorry. Okay. Madam Chair, I would move that the TCC recommend to City Council an addendum to the 2016 Bicycle Master Plan that provides an updated map or maps showing existing funded and proposed bike facilities since BMP adoption, and that we find the map updates consistent with the city's circulation element, bicycle master plan, and Vision Zero strategy. Hopefully you don't leave me hanging without a second after all that reading I just,
I'll second that.
okay.
Well, I just want to make one comment that I want to make sure that's in at least, that's in 2 sentences. As the way she spoke it when it goes to city council, please. Okay, thank you. Okay, we ready to vote? All in favor of the motion as amended, as spoken by Ms. Blackerby?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, I think this is wonderful. I don't want to just move right past this quickly. It's a lot of work, and we really appreciate it very much. But now it's time to talk about Cliff Drive.
Yes, Chair Rodriguez, we are going to have a presentation by Mr. Derek Bailey, our city traffic principal engineer. And let me go ahead and get the presentation loaded. There we go. And then while we're just passing the keyboard off, at the staff table today, again, it's myself, Jessica Grant, interim public works downtown manager, and then sitting right to the left of me is Chelsea Swanson, who's the interim transportation supervising planner. And to Chelsea's left is Elizabeth Mason, who's been graciously helping us with all of our TCC meetings. So we thank her for being on board tonight.
Well,
All
thank you.
right, Mr. Bailey.
Good evening. Nice to see everybody. And just on the heels of what Mr. Fertner was talking about, being a significant gap in our network, we've been working to develop a project on Cliff Drive. And there's been a lot of work that's happened over the past few years. The purpose of being here tonight with this report to you is just for any members of the public that happen to be watching this, this is going to be just have a really brief project overview. But then the real reason we're here tonight is just to discuss some of the community feedback that we've received and some of the design changes that we've made to the project in response to that feedback. And then we'll talk about some of the next steps with the project. We did have a virtual public meeting this past Tuesday. And so if anybody tuned in for that, this is going to look very similar to that. And we will have an information table set up on Cliff Drive near the intersection of Cliff and Meigs Saturday morning from 10 till noon. We're going to have a big strip map of the area where we are proposing some changes if anybody wants to inspect in a little bit more detail. So just by way of background, Cliff Drive, the planning area is all the way from the beach area in the west all the way to Castillo Street in the east. It's about 3.1 miles. This black line right here going up Las Positas, that represents the MoDOC Las Positas path that was just completed. And the county and the city are working together, and the pathway at the end of MoDOC is going to be extended out to the Auburn Trail. Several different phases of construction, but it should be complete by around the end of 2023. On this end of the project, though, is that gap that Mr. Fertner was talking about, and so that's where we are working to develop plans to implement a bike facility on Cliff Drive. So back in 2019, when we really started to engage with the community about Cliff Drive and what the future of Cliff Drive is going to look like, we started with just showing the community a whole bunch of photos of some of the projects and facilities that have been implemented in other communities, just to get a sense for what they wanted in their neighborhood. And so what really resonated with the community was a two-way bike path. This is an example down in Orange County. And so something similar to this is planned for Cliff Drive, a two-way bike path along the south side of Cliff Drive, as I mentioned, nearly 3.1 miles long. And in addition to the bike path, we heard loud and clear from the community that frequent, safe, and convenient crossing points across Cliff Drive are a must. And so this map just represents where new crosswalks and traffic signals are planned along the corridor. So community input so far, feedback along most of the route's been good. Our most recent public meetings before last Tuesday was in January. And what we heard in January, and just going back even a few years, was there's concerns about the configuration near the commercial area. And I'll just go into a little bit more detail about that. Commercial area, when I say commercial area, that's shown up on the map there. That's just that area straddling Miggs Road, right in the middle of the Cliff Drive corridor. And this map shows the original concept. And if I can get my cursor going here, on the left side of the screen, that's Camino Calma. That's the street that runs along the side of the shopping center. There's a new traffic signal planned for Camino Calma. The original, and that won't change. That's consistent with the new proposed concept. The original concept had a two-way shared use path along the south side, just kind of following my cursor there. So it was going to be a shared path with both pedestrians and cyclists. And two-way paths, they present some unique safety challenges just with users of the path kind of going opposite the direction of traffic. And specifically, drivers turning left aren't always looking for users of the path going in that opposite direction. So in this particular area, there's a high number of very busy commercial driveways. And so the high number of busy driveways combined with that two-way bike path and those unique safety concerns, we really had to find a way to mitigate that in order to make this a safe facility. That's why the medians were proposed, in order to restrict some of those left turns and take away those conflicts. But the community felt that the medians would have negative impact on circulation overall and just weren't completely on board with that. So with the original concept, these lines shown up on the map there, that just shows the bike movements. They both be on the same side of the road. Eastbound shown in blue, westbound in red. Excuse me. And this is a collision map, just showing the history of collisions, recent history of collisions in the area. Hard to read, I know, but takeaway from this is a lot of the collisions that have been happening in this area of Cliff Drive involved left-turning collisions. So to add a two-way bike path to that mix would have just increased the safety concerns out there. So that's why the medians were proposed. But given the public feedback, we've developed a new alternative with no medians, and it would involve directional bike paths, and I'll show you what that means in a moment. The one thing to note about the directional bike paths, though, is that the westbound bikes must cross over. And so if we look where the bikes will be moving in the updated proposal, you can see that the eastbound cyclists, they'll stay on the south side of the road, no change there. But the westbound cyclists, they'll be on the north side of the road. So that's the change from the original concept. And I mentioned the westbound cyclists will have to cross over. If we can go to the right side of the screen, if you can see my cursor hovering, from Salida del Sol, which is kind of the back way into Washington Elementary, if you can picture where that is, all the way over past City College to Castillo, that's still proposed to be a two-way path, no change from the original concept. But if you're a westbound cyclist, when you get to the Salida del Sol intersection, you would cross over to the north side in the crosswalk that was proposed for Salida del Sol. The westbound cyclists would then go along the north side of Cliff Drive, past Miggs, past the shopping center, over to Oliver, where they would cross back over to the south side of the road in the planned crosswalk and back into the two-way bike path that would continue out to the beach. This is the cross-section directly in front of the shopping center. I'll start on the left-hand side of the screen, just describing what we're looking at here. There'll be a 6-foot wide sidewalk. Next to it would be a sidewalk level, 6-foot wide bike lane, and then a parkway, possibly with trees, likely with trees. And then you can see the roadway, there continues to be 5 lanes, just like there is today, just like there was proposed in the original concept, but without the median. And then on the north side of the road's a mirror image of the south. There'd be a parkway with trees, a sidewalk level bike lane, and a sidewalk. Now, that's in contrast to the original concept, which I'm going to roll into here. And that had the two-way shared use path on the south side. You can see the 3 traffic lanes for eastbound, the median, the westbound lanes. I'd like to point out on the north side of the road next to the shopping center, this is what we call a curb-faced sidewalk. And so there's no buffer between the traffic lanes and the sidewalk. So not as comfortable as when there is a buffer parkway present. Again, that's just an image of that north side sidewalk. So under the new proposal, this side of the road will get a parkway with trees. And again, there'd be a directional bike lane on this side of the road. So just the comfort for pedestrians and the separation from traffic would be much better. Examples of similar facilities that other communities have done. This is Cambridge, Massachusetts. You can see the raised sidewalk level bike lane next to the sidewalk. They've used a nice contrasting material so that you can visually see where the bikes should be and where pedestrians should be. This is in Vancouver, and you can see the parkway with trees, the sidewalk level bike lane, and there's some contrast. They've done a little bit different treatment just to create some separation between the sidewalk and the raised bike lane. So we're just going to step through what this looks like now going along the corridor. So this is the Salida del Sol intersection. This is where the crossover would begin. And so just I'm hovering over that two-way bike path right here. You can see the skipped center line. So if you're a westbound cyclist, you'd go through that Salida del Sol intersection on the green highlights, cross over to the north side of the road, and then continue on to the west. The light gray, that's sidewalk. The dark gray, that's the raised sidewalk level bike lane. The tan, that parkway planter area with possibly with trees. If we move over to the Meigs intersection, again, you can see the sidewalk in light gray. Dark gray shows the sidewalk level bike lane, the parkway with trees. Notice this driveway right here. This is the first driveway west of the Meigs intersection. That's closest to McDonald's heading into the shopping center. We've met with the shopping center management, and we're discussing whether or not that would be better as a right-out only driveway, not allowing left turns out of that driveway. That's a really challenging left turn to make. Excuse me. So we'll continue to talk to their management about that. The light blue, that gives you, that's the existing curb line, so it just gives you a sense for where the road is being narrowed. And over to Camino Calma, again, that traffic signal is still proposed to be in place at that intersection. And then when we get over to the Oliver intersection, again, you can see the dark gray raised sidewalk level bike lane cross back over to the south side, and then they'd be in a two-way bike path out to the beach. So some of the benefits and trade-offs with this updated alignment. Benefits, it's safer for cyclists, especially in the commercial area, because they'll be going the same direction as traffic past busy driveways. Safer for pedestrians because they won't be sharing space in this area with bikes. And this is something that's really starting to resonate with the community, given the proliferation of e-bikes and some of the speeds that people can operate those bikes at. It's better to have separated space rather than mixing pedestrians and cyclists. Without the medians, it'll be less impactful to turning movements. There'll be parkways with trees for shade and improved aesthetics. And again, that'll be on both sides of the road instead of just the south side of the road with the original proposal. And there'll be better shopping center access for cyclists because there'll be a facility on that north side of the road. Some of the trade-offs, the westbound bike crossover, generally it's preferred not to have cyclists cross over, keep them on one side of the road, but given the benefits of having this crossover, we think it's worth it, and we think it can be done safely and conveniently. Although not really intended, those medians that were part of the original proposal would have had a safety benefit for pedestrians. We do see some pedestrian crossing activity in front of the shopping center, and just having those medians would have allowed them to cross halfway at a time. Even though not a formal crossing, it would have been a place to divide up that crossing. And it's going to be more expensive to implement this proposal with the updated. We just got word from our engineering folks today. They think it's probably about an extra $1 million. So that being said, about the pedestrian crossing activity in front of the shopping center, we've been kind of bouncing around the idea of whether or not it's appropriate to add some additional crosswalks in this area. And these are the locations that have been discussed. On the right-hand side, that's near Lighthouse. That's the street that lines up with Washington Elementary. The spacing to the MIGS traffic signal is not great there, so we're going to have to look into that a little bit deeper and just see whether or not that's feasible. And then right in front of the shopping center and gas station, that's about midway between those two planned crosswalk, or two traffic signals, the one at MIGS and the planned traffic signal at Camino Calma. We're not sure what the demand is going to be after the project. Certainly the Camino Calma traffic signal is going to serve some of the demand out there, but we're not sure what kind of demand is going to be left and whether or not crosswalk in the middle of that block would be a good amenity or not. So next steps, evaluating the public feedback, again from Tuesday. Based on what we heard Tuesday, there seemed to be good support that we're moving in the right direction, but we'll listen to the public on Saturday as well when we have our information table out on Cliff Drive. We'll look for additional crosswalk opportunities and continue to study that. We were planning to take this to City Council on May 17th, but that date is getting bumped to be determined, but it'll likely be a week or two later. And the purpose of that visit to City Council is to get direction from City Council on the leveraging amount. The more local funding that we put into the next funding application, the more points we score, the more competitive we are. But obviously that funding comes at the expense of some other city activity, so that's something the council will have to wrestle with. Our funding applications are going to be due on June 15th, and we're working on those applications as we speak. The state budget is still a possibility. If you remember back in 2021, both the state legislature and the governor both proposed a $500 million augmentation to the active transportation program. And that would have funded our application from 2 years ago. And we were very disappointed that there could not be a meeting of the minds and that come to fruition. But apparently it's being discussed again this year, another augmentation. And from what we've heard, that if that comes to fruition, it will fund our application from 2 years ago. So we are hopeful that that comes to fruition. But we won't find out until after the applications are due. So we still have to do our applications. And the results from our applications will be by October, so we should know one way or the other. But we're feeling good about the project that we've developed with the community, and think it's going to be a great amenity. And just for the public, if you'd like to share your feedback with us, that's the project email address. So we'd love to hear from you and be happy to answer any questions.
Let's start with questions. Ms. Blackerby?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. A couple questions just with this update, and maybe you can click back a few. There are, well, I guess there's 3 bus stops in that range. I'm wondering if you could go back to the proposed section.
The cross-section or the layouts?
The layouts.
Yes. So that's the Salida del Sol intersection, and that shows the 2 existing bus stops remaining roughly in the same location.
Yeah. So further down. So I guess one more, one more click.
I think you're
There's
probably
kind of,
looking
it's
for
in
the...
between.
Yep.
It's in between those. So I think there was a more higher up view prior to these.
You can see the indentation of the
Yeah.
pullout right here.
Yeah. So
We-
what's
we-
the plan there?
Well, we haven't completely worked that out yet, and we
Okay.
haven't engaged with MTD yet.
True.
There's a couple schools of thought as to whether or not that pullout is a good idea. Obviously, we'd like to discuss them with MTD, but pullouts can reduce travel time, makes it more challenging for bus drivers to get back into the stream of traffic, and thus increasing travel time.
Yeah, I'll just clarify. I don't really care so much about the pullout. It's more that, are you deploying a ramp into into a bike lane? Sort of like the spacing there.
Yes, no, there
from
would
the
be,
curb.
there would be a little alignment jog in the bike lane in order to
Okay.
accommodate a ramp. That hasn't been sketched in yet, but
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, and yes.
Yeah, and that one is, there's a shelter that's kind of inset into the.
Yeah. So
you
the
know,
nice
sort of
thing is
wall
there's
there.
room there to do
Yeah.
a jog.
So then further down, yeah, right there. So that's sort of similar issue, except I think I don't know if there's a bench there or not, but
Is there a shelter there?
there's not a shelter there. No,
Not
I don't
now.
think so. But anyhow, there's a bus stop there, obviously. So the sort of same question remains about distance and what would be, where everything would be.
Yeah, I think ideally we'd love to get 8 feet. The parkways, as they're shown there, are about 5 feet, so
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be nice to get a slight alignment shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
Anyway, we'll talk about that. One thing about the crosswalk, I mean, it is a bummer that it just doesn't, go perfectly all the way along the corridor together, but I understand why. The crosswalk sort of jog for bikes, which I appreciate the sort of part green, part yeah. A little confused
That
about
would be
that.
white. White doesn't
Yeah.
show up very well on our aerial drawings,
I know.
though.
So white and green.
Mhm.
One thing I'm thinking is, I'm assuming that's a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So having like a lean bar for cyclists so that you don't have to necessarily dismount to push the button or like reach super far to do it, so that people could get across. I don't think we really have that any places or many places in town that I can think of.
Not a lean bar. So what we tried to do on Las Positas, for example, is where the push buttons are, making sure they're conveniently located next to the approach on the right side for cyclists. You can lean on those. Plus, there's usually a curb next to them, so it's easy to put your feet up on. We never tried a lean bar, though. I think we'd
What is that?
love.
Kind of a metal thing that's near, it didn't have to be very big at all, but that's near like where a cyclist would, you can usually like put your foot on it or lean on it. So, if you're waiting on your bike, sometimes you're just like wobbly, at an intersection, and that often causes problems when you go to start up again to go through the intersection. So I think for that, basically the idea is you wouldn't have to dismount, and you'd be safe and stable while you waited to get the go-ahead to cross. So anyway, something to think about there.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then to your question about looking into possible additional crosswalks, yeah, I think the one at the shopping center would be interesting and probably very helpful, actually. I think there are a lot of things that people don't do now over there because it's so wide and scary to cross, and they have to go so far. Camino Calmo will help, but as we know, like, people just take the shortest distance between the two things they want to go to. So I think if everything sort of safety-wise works out, that would be nice. The one in between, like at Lighthouse, the way that people whip around the corner and then start heading that way worries me about that location. So obviously you'll do your due diligence, but those are just my initial thoughts. Thank you.
Ms. Horn?
Those are the exact two spots that I was worried about also. Just starting with what you just said about the added crosswalks, I lived there for 30 years in that neighborhood, and you always saw people crossing in the middle because it was so long between. And I would really like to see another crosswalk between Lighthouse and, or Lighthouse, I guess, and Camino Calma. And kind of just like to support that idea. And then the other question I had is about the, when people cross over to the shopping side to continue west on their bikes, and then there's this place where they can come back and get on the other side at Oliver, right? I just am imagining people coming on their bike along there, just sailing along and then just, just sailing across the road right there and not really taking time, I have to stop, and people don't, a lot of bike riders don't like to stop even at the lights, let alone where there's just a curve. So I'm just wondering about how safe that is. Is there any way to mitigate that danger there?
That's a great comment. We had a similar question on Tuesday night, a little bit different, but same principle. And for me, I think what it boils down to is making it as convenient as possible so that people don't do that.
Yes.
And when we were talking about this concept of splitting up the bikeways into the two sides of the road and having this crossover, the question of where is the best place to have them cross over, what kind of traffic control is best to have them cross over. And originally we were thinking that Camino Calma might be the best place to cross back over because there's a traffic signal. But the more we thought about it, traffic signals have delays associated with them because, these two traffic signals at Camino Calma and MIGS are going to be synchronized with one another. They'll operate on a fixed cycle. So when you pull up, you hit the push button, you want to cross the street, it might be 15, 20, 30 seconds before you get to cross Cliff Drive. And for us, that's a disincentive for cyclists to properly use the facility. So then we were thinking, well, perhaps Oliver and Salida del Sol, those first crosswalks outside of the commercial area, those will have pedestrian activated flashers, and those turn on instantly. And so as far as making it convenient and safe, we, unlike the other crosswalks that are planned for the corridor, if I can, man, my eyesight's getting bad.
Do you figure that the bike riders will hit the flasher?
Yeah, and what these crosswalks will have that the other ones won't along the corridor is refuge islands. And that's just another visual cue for drivers as well, that you're entering this commercial corridor, the character's changing, try and keep traffic speeds reasonable, but also increase the safety given that cyclists are also going to be using that. So for me, it's going to be a safe and convenient crosswalk that's going to turn on instantly for cyclists. And obviously it's a concern that cyclist behavior, we're probably not going to get 100% compliance, but with this type of facility, we've laid the breadcrumbs that it'll be safe and easy to use. So I think there should be relatively good compliance.
I can't really see it here, but is there a turn lane for Palisades?
There will be.
Which is the next one after Oliver?
Yes. So obviously this is the Oliver intersection, but this is a center left turn lane. And that center left turn lane will continue on to Flora Vista. So all of those side streets, Mohawk, Palisades, they'll all be a center left turn lane that they can use.
Because in the 30 years I lived there, the two places I got hit rear-ended was Camino Calma, someone doing a left lane when going right in front of me. And the other one was getting rear-ended at that place, stopped, you know, and someone behind me didn't stop. So if there was a turn lane there, it would have been safe.
Right. Yeah, that's something we heard from the community as a really must-have in this section is a way to turn left without fear of getting rear-ended.
Yeah, my neighbor got rear-ended the month before me, and it's like, oh, this happens a lot. And of course, it didn't go to the police or anything. The report never went to the police, so it's not even in your data. Thank you.
Andres, do you have any questions at this time? You don't have to.
Mostly just a comment. I think this is great. I think this would be great. I grew up in this neighborhood, and riding through there, I think cyclists take a lot of pressure in that corridor. I specifically always kind of network through the neighborhoods whenever possible to avoid that whole section. Not much of a problem at 7 a.m., but 2 p.m. on a Saturday, it's a whole different story. So I think this would be really great. One question about the crosswalks, though, is there, it goes from a very kind of wide open, pretty high speed section there to introducing the stoplight, which I think is great. But then with the potential crosswalk in the middle, I'm just kind of curious if they're from like a driver's perspective of frequent start stops, amplifying frustration, that type of stuff. If that factors in, or how much, like what's too frequent?
That's a great question. I'm going to go back to that there.
Yeah.
I guess it becomes a question of how frequently do we think that crosswalk is going to be used, and also the character of the corridor. If obviously State Street, when it was open, was kind of way other end of the spectrum, but as you're driving up State Street, those mid-block traffic signal crosswalks could turn at any time. And drivers just got used to it, and that was just the character of the corridor. It helped set the speed of the corridor, some lower operating speeds. I don't think this crosswalk would be used nearly as frequently as the State Street crosswalks, but it does help set the character of the corridor, between, as you're coming from Flora Vista, there'll be a crosswalk at Fellowship, again at Oliver that we just looked at, the traffic signal at Camino Calma, the lane narrowing, the additional trees and landscaping. I think the corridor is going to feel a lot better, so the inclination of drivers to treat this corridor more aggressively should go down. I think you make a good point, though, that we should be sensitive about that and just recognize that this isn't State Street and that it's still an important corridor for movement, but it can just happen at a slower speed.
Thank you for that.
Can I just ask one more thing? Is the whole middle lane there a turn lane?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. This is great that so many of us are familiar with this neighborhood. It's a major neighborhood in Santa Barbara. And I'm disappointed that we can't keep the center medians, because I think psychologically it slows drivers down. I mean, I mean that's proven, and you know that better than I. So when I was disappointed that it had to be modified, and I don't like the idea that it might be modified just so people can go faster. That doesn't set well with me personally, because there's just so many risks for accidents. And I think the people on the Mesa deserve to have a slower moving neighborhood. They deserve that. So I understand your presentation, and I want to ask a little more clarification. We are looking possibly at a crosswalk at Salida del Sol and at Lighthouse, maybe?
Definitely Salida del Sol.
Right, but
possibly at Lighthouse.
Possibly Lighthouse, and then of course Meigs and further down. Now, when you hit that Oliver, when you've got your bicyclists hopefully going back across the street, will there be an opportunity for the bicyclists to just keep sailing down Cliff Drive on the right-hand side, even though they are being shown every which way to get back on the two-way bike lane. I'm concerned about that, especially the real fast ones. Why should I bother? I'm just gonna I'll just stay out of the way of the cars, especially if there is a bike lane there. I mean, is there gonna be a, sort of a bike lane on that side, or is it gonna be eliminated?
No, there's not enough room for a bike lane and a bike path.
Okay.
It'll be a bike path only.
Yeah, and it'll be on the south
South side.
side. Okay, that's significant. Well, that being said, I am sorry that we have to get rid of the medians. I think they would have slowed everything down a lot better, and I don't love that it's gonna be 5 lanes open for cars. That feels like the way it is right now, and people go too fast. I did see, though, and this encourages me, that there is gonna be a pedestrian island at Oliver. Is that correct? A little, in the middle?
That's the updated proposal, given that those crosswalks at Oliver and Salida del Sol, where those crossovers are going to take place, and just that there's going to be bikes using those crosswalks in addition to the pedestrians, we feel that those medians are an important safety feature.
Well, I would like to add that I think that they would be also important if you do a crosswalk at the shopping center. I think the median is not going to, devastate a shopper in their car trying to get in if they're placed strategically to miss the driveways. And I would also really support your work with the management of the shopping center to stop the left turn lanes out of the McDonald's. If they could encourage people to use that back way somehow. And where I live, at the end of the MODOC path, the one you talked about earlier that's going to be extended, since right now it stops, it's really interesting because I'm right on that corner where Calle de los Amigos meets MODOC. And at that point, the really nice bike path stops. And then bicyclists have to go across the street. And what's good is there's a big old sign with red dots to make sure that bicyclists don't think they can just kind of keep going down it's the opposite of what we're talking about, but it's still signage, and clear directions make a big difference. It's stopping them from trying to go on dirt or some alternate, because the fancy bike path is now over. Big sign, walk across or drive across and get on the old path until it gets improved. So I think though you really do have to do a lot to get the bicyclists to do what's appropriate. That's been my experience on the new bike path. The beautiful one that we're enjoying tremendously, right? Okay, those are my comments. Hillary has another question, Ms. Blackley.
So I'm just thinking about, and I've been thinking a lot about, as we do these massive, projects, the almost getting into the weeds on existing facilities, and I know this facility doesn't exist yet, but about the transitions, those little links, like, kind of how it's sort of hard to, get to the beachway path if you're, on Cabri, you gotta, bike through the grass or whatever, right? That we have these nice, long, linear things, but sometimes it's not super smooth getting to them. So I'm trying to really, think about this type of thing. So at Camino Calma, there's not the sort of, green, I think it's reasonable to assume, right, that bikes might flip a U-turn at that point, right? And so just thinking about right, because if you're say you're coming from Miggs and you turn down, but then you want to go over to, I don't know, Mesa Verde or something, you'll probably want to get around there. So just thinking about what are the little treatments that could happen there, even though it's a traffic light, to make sure that the crosswalk is for everyone. So anyway, that's kind of a question, kind of a think about it statement, but I don't know if there's a different kind of treatment when there's a light versus a crosswalk.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Apologies. We worked on something similar to that on Las Positas at the Veronica Springs intersection. And where the path crosses over to the Bellar Knolls side of Las Positas, we tried to make the push buttons really convenient to use so that they're right beside the sidewalk, they're easy to lean on, that sort of thing, just to make them bike friendly. We're going to continue to watch it just to make sure that our ideas are being well received by cyclists. But I think you're spot on, though. The signal at Camino Calma and at Meigs, just as far as going from one side of the road to the other on those bike paths, we need to make those crosswalks as convenient as possible.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think one of my big critiques of the long, path on one side originally we were talking about was like, so how are you going to cross? Like, how are you going to safely cross? So you kind of had to answer that question with this piece of the project, but I think that makes it, in some way, makes it better, to think about all those little transitions and what it means for safety. So thanks.
Yeah, I just want to make one final pitch for as many little traffic islands for people as possible wherever they're crossing. I think it would be really, really helpful. And what's the speed limit going to be up there?
That's a great question. We will have to resurvey the street post-construction per state law. But the speed limit out there is 35 miles an hour right now. I'd expect operating speeds would drop. So when we do our speed survey, hard to say, low 30s. I think our target speed that we would like to see on Cliff Drive is around 30. That seems to be a reasonable speed for a important street like that. But again, that's up to the drivers and how fast they drive post-construction.
Well, thanks very much for all of your amazing input. Andres, you have a?
I got one more question. We're talking about the crosswalks and I think the above-ground flashers, as you defined them, I think, last night. But does that extend all the way down to Flora Vista and Mesa Lane? Would that be adding one there as part of this?
The Flora Vista Mesa Lane intersection would remain a traffic signal.
Yes.
We are planning to put in islands at that traffic signal, especially that, would it be the east crosswalk where it's an important school crosswalk. That would be become a refuge island there. But in between the section that we're talking about in Flora Vista, there would be a new crosswalk with flashers at Fellowship, and then the one at Oliver that we looked at tonight, and then Camino Calma. So that we would be filling in that section with additional crosswalks.
Okay, but would that Flora Vista crosswalk get a flasher?
It's a traffic signal right now, so it would remain a traffic signal.
Okay. I just asked because I know that's for whatever reason a pinch point. I've had a couple near close calls, just even walking or.
Yeah, great point. And just for the community's information, about a week ago, we implemented a leading pedestrian interval at that crosswalk as well. So until the refuge island can be installed, a leading pedestrian interval is when the walk light comes on before the green light for traffic. So it gives pedestrians a chance to get a few steps head start on traffic and kind of really establish the right-of-way in the crosswalk before traffic will try to turn in front of them.
Okay.
Yeah, we've used it successfully at probably about half a dozen other locations in the city.
So maybe just to clarify in my mind, so if there's a traffic light, that intersection wouldn't also get flashers if the pedestrian triggers?
No, it's one or the other. You don't use flashers and traffic signals at the same location.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood your question.
I have one more.
Ms. Horn?
Just one comment, this kind of went past me, but the driveway that goes out at McDonald's and people crossing over and going left to get to the big intersection, that is such a dangerous place, and people do really dangerous aerobics trying to get out there between all the different directions that traffic's going, and I just would like to support your idea of making that stop ever letting there be left turn there, and I hope that the shopping center management is in agreement too. Thank you for following that up.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much.
Chair Rodriguez, can we prompt for public comment?
Oh, yes. if
Yes.
there- Yes.
Yeah.
We have Barry Remis for public comment.
Great.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you again. Barry Remis, SB Bike Plus Coast. I'm on this time. So hopefully the second time is the charm with getting ATP funding for this. And it's a little inconvenient about the timing of it all. And we'll all cross our fingers for augmentation. Yeah, we were really appreciative of the transportation team. Coast Plus SB Bike recently met with the team to review these modifications. And we certainly realize that there are some trade-offs, and this is a compromise. And when we're comfortable overall with the compromise, and we realize that to be able to try to play between added convenience, not only for pedestrians and bicyclists, but also for all users, including motorists as well, business owners, and the concerns about the left turns. So we understand about the removal of the medians, and are accepting and comfortable with the crossover. Just to maybe to take it a step further and say again, I'm not sure how feasible it might be for this to be considered, but to optimize the convenience factor of a cyclist. I mean, from a pedestrian standpoint, none of this really changes. The pedestrian experience is still wonderfully safe, both sides of the road. For a cyclist intending or having to make the crossover, again, in an effort to try to make that as convenient and accessible as possible, and any ways to be able to mitigate the need for the cyclist to have to stop. Not sure if there's ways to be able to implement some type of sensors, or whether that is laser loop in the bike lane, or something that somehow detects ahead of time a cyclist that's intending to make the crossover, therefore activating the flashers, the rapid flashing beacons, such that the cyclist may not, in all cases, need to necessarily stop. It could be a pie in the sky situation, and maybe cost prohibitive, but just something to throw out there. This example here of the return back to the ocean side on Oliver, this could be a technicality here, but we're noticing that, wondering if the green conflict striping should be on the opposite side of the crosswalk, because the bicyclist is on the right side of the road and intuitively thinks to stay on the right. So if they're coming from the north, crossing over, maybe the green striping might be, and that's probably just a Photoshop kind of a fix there. So we do see that this is something that will work. Again, because there will not be Class 2 bike lanes on the road, we realize that more avid cyclists are going to be perhaps wanting to stay on the road, and that's something that they will have the option to do. But to Chair Rodriguez's point, there's nothing preventing a hardcore cyclist from just staying in the motorist lane, continuing down if they choose not to cross back over, and that's their risk to take. But again, so to be able to, in any way that we can maximize not only the convenience, but coupled with the safety for cyclists, to be able to make those two crossovers would be ideal. But we do find that this is a good compromise, and the project hopefully will go through with either the leveraging that the city will be considering, the city council will be considering to win enough points to get funding, or perhaps the alternative of augmentation to win funding back for the original application. So won't that be interesting? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Remus. Well, I hope that our comments and discussion are going to be useful to the staff. And it looks like Mr. Bailey's coming back.
Yes, no, I was just going to change the slide back to the email address just so the public can see.
Great. Thank you very much, very, very much. We do have some program updates, I believe, from Ms. Grant.
Hey, yes, thank you, Chair Rodriguez and committee members. A few program updates, and I'll keep them short. The first one being the State Street Promenade update. Again, there's two different processes going on. There's sort of the interim operations of the State Street Promenade, and then there's the longer-term master planning effort. So from the interim perspective, what we've been working on with the businesses along the promenade, again, was establishing the 20-foot fire lane that is in place along the promenade area. We are working closely with the businesses to achieve ADA compliance, so having an ADA compliant table that's within the right-of-way, or and the businesses that may need a ramp if they're not next to a city ramp. So those are the sort of the immediate items that we've been working on. Coming soon, we don't have a date yet for council, but we'll probably get more information on when portability will be required for those outdoor businesses. So that's the sort of the interim operations right now. The master planning effort that's underway, the city had put out requests for proposals for consultant assistance on that master planning effort. We have received, I believe it was 8 proposals, and so those are in the review process right now. And I think that's all I have right now, other than that process will continue, and probably in a few months there'll be back at council for a contract award for the consultant work, and then there'll be a whole bunch of other kickoff meetings associated with the larger long-term master planning effort. But if you ever want to know, they meet approximately monthly. And so just continue to check the city websites for upcoming items. They've been all very interesting. The last item was on the RFP process, and yes, committee member Blackerby is also on the State Street, advisory committee. And so please, feel free to chime in, committee member Blackerby, if I'm missing anything of major importance.
No, you're right. I mean, what I would just encourage folks to do, the meetings are once a month at this point. What I'd encourage members of the public to do is to, go to them, pay attention. We just had our first in-person one this month. We haven't had a lot of public participation. Unfortunately, it's 4 to 6 on a Monday at this point. So that's not great for people who, maybe work till 5. But right now, we're sort of laying the groundwork to make sure that all the committee members understand how does State Street work, how does it run, who cleans it, who maintains everything. The fire lane thing was a big deal. And to lay that groundwork so that when we get a consultant on board, we all have the same understanding, and then we can talk about the, real controversial things like transportation on State Street. So it's still kind of early days, but I do encourage folks to, if you can't attend or watch it while it's live, to watch after the fact, because it's a big undertaking, and we can't, if we do it with not that much public input, it's going to be a failure from the start. So anyway. Thank you.
And we're trying to, thank you for the prompt for the transportation topic day. We're still trying to get on just to discuss kind of the overall transportation network and how it would relate to the master planning effort as well. So there isn't a date yet on that, but I hope it is coming soon.
Yeah, and I don't even understand how you could do an overview in 2 hours, because the meetings are only 2 hours, and you could talk about, sidewalks for 2 hours. So, or I could, maybe that's just me, but yeah. Yeah.
Just in the bigger picture, I don't think anybody's got an answer for this, but at some point, whatever is planned for State Street, we'll come back to this committee for our ideas or.
Yeah, Chair Rodriguez, that's another item, because there's so many committees, and of course the Transportation Circulation Committee, that is a big stakeholder within the whole master planning effort. So I think once the overall effort is kicked off, what I would hope to see is when all of those touch points would be with the various committees.
Yeah, once the professional consultation is aligned, then we'll hear more. Yep.
Yes.
That's what, thank you. And thank you very much for your encouragement for us to watch the tapes or go to the meetings if it's at all possible.
Yeah,
Thank
there
you.
was one from our downtown parking team. It was the day in life of State Street. And that was a really interesting topic just to see, or what you normally don't see, because you're not out there at 2 a.m. in the morning when all the street sweepers are out, or the early morning deliveries, because, State Street doesn't have the benefit of alleys. And so everything needs to still operate and function. And so they provide a little insight into that world.
Cool.
So if you need, or trying to get to sleep, maybe watch some videos before bed.
It is interesting.
Yes.
Where are your meetings held? Here? No, where, what meeting room?
We've only had one in person, and it was at the Palm Park Center. I don't know that it's going to be there every time. I kind of don't think it is, but
Right. I think I believe they're looking for a new home.
it's a 15-member committee.
Right.
So plus the staff,
Yes.
we wouldn't fit
50 or 15?
15. Might as well be 50 if it's 15, but it's it would be a little tight in here, so they're trying to figure out, a big
I
enough
see.
room where
Yeah.
we could make it all happen, so.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
And then I'll go through the other two program updates, and then we can, if there is any other questions, we could hold public comment at the end if anybody's wishing to speak on those program updates. So the active transportation program, again, as Mr. Bailey alluded to during the last presentation, there's a potential hope for the Cycle 5 augmentation. There was supposed to be a little workshop on it this week, and then it was delayed another month. So we're hoping to have some more details associated with that. And as Mr. Bailey mentioned, we will not know the outcome until after we submit the Cycle 6 grants. And so the Cycle 6 grants are due on June 15th. So we have a lot of work to do over the next, 8 weeks, less, 8 weeks and counting. 6 weeks, 6 weeks. And then, yes, for some existing ATP projects, the West Side Paseos went out to bid last week. And so that's exciting. So we hope to be before council for contract awards shortly. The East Side Paseos have already gone out to bid, and we're working on the construction schedule with the contractor already. And then that would also rep in the downtown De La Vina piece. And then the State Street undercrossing project, we're just finalizing all the design, but that one should be ready to go out to bid in June as well. So a lot of movement on those projects. And then the last item is Measure A Cycle 5. That was one where we had applied for a few Safe Routes to School projects, and then 2 just bike and pedestrian projects. We should know shortly on the preliminary results. They will be posted, let's see, I believe May 11th for when it goes before the SBCAG subcommittee officially. So that will come out in the staff report in about a week. And then May 19th, it will go before the SBCAG board. So that's when we'll have the official on that. So I will report more once we have the official determination on that.
We have some public comment, I think.
Yeah.
Before that, I just have a quick question about something that's not even on here. Any information about the Mission Canyon Bridge, that whole corridor that's been,
Yes, so for the Mission Canyon Bridge project, as originally investigated, that was looking at not a complete replacement of it also tied in the vehicular bridge, and then also with the work there, tying in ped and bike facilities. So that project is no longer, we had done the investigated and technical review that went before City Council. City Council was not, voted to not move forward with that effort. And so we will be reimbursed some of the highway program bridge funds associated with that effort. But there's a part two, and City Council did want to explore for pedestrian and potential bike facility in the area, so not touching the existing vehicular bridge. That was an effort that was, yes, approved by council to move forward on. Staff requested a delay of the start time of that effort so we could get through the ATP cycle. So that effort is supposed to kick off this August.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think we have some public comment on the program updates.
We have Barry Remis for public comment.
Thank you for indulging me one last time. I am going to throw some more encouragement your way regarding the State Street Program report. As we know, the State Street Advisory Committee, with which Ms. Grant had referred to, they are meeting, I think it's third Monday of each month, and the long-term master planning process is getting kicked underway with the RFPs and the consultant determinations and reviews. But in the meantime, life still struggles on State Street, and part of that struggle, unfortunately, sometimes is negative feedback that comes in from members of the community regarding some bad cyclist behavior that isn't preferred. So SB Bike Plus Coast has been kind of wrapping our heads around it, working with the city staff. There's not any one group, but sometimes some cyclists may not be riding as respectfully or as safe as they should. And what we're trying to do is to kind of, in a way, separate the behavior element from the bicyclists or the bikes themselves. I mean, not the bikes, but the people who ride them. Because clearly, the majority of people who are on their bikes are respectful and riding at a reasonable rate of speed. So what we would really hate to see, and I hope that you'll agree with this, is that in the interim, before the master planning process really comes into fruition, is that some drastic measures hopefully won't be taken. And we're really trying to make a push, as we did at our Earth Day table at the Arlington this past weekend, to really encourage the members of the public, and then I strongly encourage members of the TCC to share both with City Council and the State Street Advisory Committee at any opportunity, whether that's attending the meeting, making comments, the benefits of keeping bicycling on State Street, both for economic reasons, just thinking about bikes equal business. If we're trying to revitalize the downtown core through the State Street Promenade, and in the future, it seems that we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot to not be able to continue to allow bicycling on State Street. It's the spine of our network. Just think about all the families that go down there. From a tourism standpoint, people who are staying at hotels. How would the bike share program work if you can't ride up and down State Street? So we really want to encourage you to be able to take the opportunities that you can to communicate to the State Street Advisory Committee to really keep it in the forefront of their minds, and city council members and the mayor, that it just really would be a shame to be able to not continue to see bicycling on our main thoroughfare, not just years into the future, but at this time too. So while we're going to be continuing to work with the city on finding the long-term ways to be able to still allow that shared space, we also hope that we'll continue to be able to see that happen in the meantime as well too. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, Ms. Blackerby?
Well, one thing I want to mention about that, the fire lane update is now you can actually bike down or up all of State Street again, because there's not a dismount zone in the 500 block. So I just want to say thank you. It's very nice, especially if you're going up. You don't have to go down to Santa Barbara Street or anything like that. So in addition to making it safer, for fire access. It's actually really, knit back together the, spine of our network. So if you haven't been out there in a while, you can bike through the whole thing now.
Good to know. If there are no further comments or items, can we adjourn the meeting? I think
Madam
we
Chair, I
can.
want to thank you for your service as chair.
Yes.
Because
You're
it has
very
been,
welcome.
I don't know how many years now. And as
A
someone who's
couple.
served as chair for I don't know how many years, I know that it's not always the easiest thing. And you did it through a pandemic. So good
There.
job. Thank you for.
Well, it's
doing
been
that.
a real pleasure, and I do hope we get a couple of new members. It would be wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
And good
Thank
night.
you, Chair Rodriguez.
You're welcome.